You got to admit you're stupid. That's the hardest part for gold bugs. I thought Bitcoin was a scam for so long. It's like going to, your granddad and asking them, can you teach me how to set up this brand new iPhone 15 that I just bought?
Why is it so important for people to get to one Bitcoin?
One Bitcoin is the North Star that everybody should be living with. I'm not a happy hippie, right? I'm not sitting here going, oh, you're going to hold Bitcoin and now the trees are going to be hugging you back.
How did you start out?
That shit looks easy. I'm not on the camp that thinks that happens. I don't see an environment where
British HODL, buy Bitcoin, shut the fuck up, get fabulously wealthy.
you need to
This
put a little bit more emphasis on the fuck to get it right.
shut the fuck up.
There you go. Now we're talking.
This is the first thing I saw when I saw your ex profile and I just fell in love instantly.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Which country are you
Um,
in? Where are
and
you from?
I'm from Austria actually.
Oh,
So
okay.
Austrian economics is the stuff I know about, but
You're
actually Austrian
home.
economics has nothing to do with the economics in Austria.
Now, yeah. Now it doesn't for sure.
No, it does not have anything to do with it. How does it? You were in gold before you went into Bitcoin, right?
Yeah.
How does a gold guy come from having gold to buying Bitcoin directly and being focused solely on Bitcoin?
Yeah. Step one, you got to admit you're stupid. And that's the hardest part for gold bugs. For me, I thought Bitcoin was a scam for so long. And, you know, it was one day where I read the Bitcoin Standard and I just realized that I was stupid. And that started my journey to basically getting on board with Bitcoin and pivoting my gold portfolio to Bitcoin.
What's the main thing, the main property maybe of gold bugs that still don't get it? What they should learn about Bitcoin?
It's the I think it's the physicality of it. I think every gold bug I speak to, it's like gold's real. I can hold it in my hand, and I always tell them that's the illusion that's been played on gold bugs because you've been convinced that gold is real because you can hold it in your hands without understanding that the realness of an asset is truly the scarcity of the asset, not the physical presence of it. You should judge an asset based on its scarcity. The scarcer it is, the more real it is, not the harder it is. Because if that's the case, why are you not holding steel? Steel is more physical than gold, but people don't hold steel, right?
Yeah, that's amazing. I heard this one argument. I think it was all also from Peter Schiff. If you hold gold or if you hold Bitcoin, it's not scarce because there are 20 other thousand of altcoins, so it cannot be scarce. It's like that's the same thing saying that gold is not scarce because there's also silver, there's also copper, there's also so many other metals. It's
Yeah,
a
I mean,
lot.
Peter Schiff's opinions at this point, after this many years on gold, especially as a big gold proponent, especially as a huge, Peter Schiff's biggest contribution is educating people on how screwed the system is. And I don't understand how someone that can educate people so well on how screwed the system is can get Bitcoin so wrong. So therefore, Peter Schiff at this point is completely irrelevant, and I don't think his opinions need to be considered. It's like going to, your granddad and asking them, "Can you teach me how to set up this brand new iPhone 15 that I just bought?"
Uh,
I don't even understand why people even consider Peter Schiff's opinions. I think it's strictly because of the size of the following that he has. I don't think there's any validity to it. So I don't even speak about Peter Schiff. I don't have time to.
Yeah, that's very good. You speak a lot about getting to one Bitcoin. I also saw it in your
Yeah.
very Merry Christmas message. Why is it so important for people to get to one Bitcoin, or like how do they come there? What's the one Bitcoin mark for you?
I think the one Bitcoin is the mark for is the North Star that everybody should be living with. And I'm talking about people with up to a $10 million net worth, because those are the people who are going to be priced out of one Bitcoin in this upcoming cycle. Because even if you've got a $10 million net worth, you're not going to liquidate $300,000 to $500,000 from that portfolio, if it's in real estate, for example, to buy one Bitcoin, an asset that you know nothing about. So I find my purpose in Bitcoin is basically helping people understand the urgency of actually owning Bitcoin and then focusing them on that North Star of getting to one Bitcoin. But there's no real objective, you know, there's no real reason as to why it's one and only one, et cetera, et cetera. But I think it's a good North Star to help people focus.
What will one Bitcoin, if you zoom out like next 20 years, what will it mean for someone to hold one Bitcoin? What freedom
It,
does it bring? What does it bring to the personal level if you hold one
Yeah, I
Bitcoin?
mean, listen, I'm not, as you've probably seen in my videos, right? I'm not a happy hippie, right? I'm not sitting here going, oh, you're going to hold Bitcoin and now the trees are going to be hugging you back. That's not what, that's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is this. If you at all in your life and in the life of your progeny that follows you want anyone to have an opinion that matters, having one Bitcoin, just like having a bunch of real estate, just like owning a bunch of equities, just like owning, in the past, a significant amount of gold, it basically entitled people to an opinion. And I don't think everyone deserves an opinion. I think you have to earn your opinion. That's the crowd that I came from. Those are the mentors that I came from. I don't think just because you're breathing means you deserve an opinion, right? I certainly had to earn my opinion when I was starting out negotiating in the property space and this, that, and the other in London. I didn't have an opinion granted to me, and the mentors I had would treat me as such until I earned my opinions. And I think if anyone wants to solidify the future of their and their family's opinions, I think you have to own one Bitcoin.
How did you start out? Like, what did your mentors teach you, and what maybe brought you also to be open-minded and being there for Bitcoin when it was ready? And also, it's a big step also for you personally if you're being a big gold guy and then going to all in on Bitcoin. Like, you have a lot of teachings that you can. So I was wrong, and now I have new information, and now I'm going on the Bitcoin path.
Yeah, I mean that's always been my journey because when I first started, I started off negotiating property deals. And my dad was in property, and I was watching him negotiate a deal. And one day I looked at him after he got off the phone, and he said, "What are you looking at?" And I said, "That shit looks easy." That's exactly what I said. That shit looks easy. And instead of telling me to take a hike, he told me, "Well, show me if it's that easy." And I was, approaching 16 years old at this point, so I had to learn. My ego got tested, and I had to learn at a very young age what a mortgage broker was, what a developer was, what a lawyer was, and how to structure a deal and how finances work and all this other stuff to do that work. And in those early days, I didn't have a granted opinion about anything until I proved what I could do. And luckily, I was pretty good at that, at negotiating deals. Now, I was the luckiest part of my life was starting that around 2005, because obviously 2 years later the world stopped, right, in 2007, 2008, the credit crunch first, and then the recession. And what that taught me was that the real estate game was just about credit. It wasn't about houses. A lot of people get confused thinking that real estate is actually about property. It's not. Real estate is actually about the credit surrounding the property market. And so when I understood that and I learned that, everything else became easy, because now I realized, oh, it's not about real estate. It's about the assets underlining it, which is why that allowed me to pivot nicely from, or be open minded to pivot from real estate to equities to gold and then to Bitcoin. I understand that I follow the capital. I don't follow my own ideals. And even more with Bitcoin, you follow the capital. You follow where the capital energy is going to go, and the answers are all in front of you.
You talked about in one of your videos in 2021 that you followed the capital because of BlackRock and
Yep.
they are going into Bitcoin. Can you talk about that?
Yeah. So in 2021, this no, it was 20 at some point, right? It's end of 2020. It was the CIO of BlackRock was on CNBC, and he said, "We think that Bitcoin could be gold 2.0." This is before anyone has ever, heard about BlackRock getting into an ETF and all this other stuff. And again, following capital trends is very, very important. Preceding that, GLD, which is the biggest gold ETF, had 17 days of outflows. 17 days of consistent outflows. That's no joke, right? And so I realized, like, this guy who is the chief investment officer of BlackRock just said that Bitcoin is gold 2.0, and now capital is moving from gold. So therefore, at that point, it emboldened my opinion about it because I was already in Bitcoin by then, and that emboldened my opinion to basically sell my entire gold position by November of 2020 and pivot it into Bitcoin.
This video will come out in middle of January, I think. So today it's the 28th of December. And so it might be interesting to see this question. Will this Bitcoin spot ETF be approved in January, and what will happen once it gets approved?
Yeah, I think I'm not an ETF expert, right? A legal ETF expert. So I lean on James and Eric, the Bloomberg analyst guys, and they're putting this at a 90% probability that it gets approved in January, and that's what I lean on. I think they're experts. I think they're studying this every single day. They're in touch. The beautiful thing about having a Bloomberg badge is that you can call BlackRock and get an opinion. And so I have to lean on their thoughts, and I think there is a 90% probability that that will happen.
And what could happen once that gets approved? Like what do you
Yeah,
expect?
in terms of price action, do you mean?
What of price action, marketing action, event action, salesperson actions? A lot. I
Yeah,
think there's a lot going on. Once it gets approved,
yeah,
it's already we're starting already to see it. But what 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 will, in a broad sense, happen once the
yeah. The securitization of an asset, which is basically what the ETF is for Bitcoin, basically makes the asset a valid asset in the eyes of institutions and big investors. So they'll turn around and they'll start marketing it. There is an ETF now. You won't be able to, you won't have to worry about buying the Bitcoin, going in and storing it and cold storage and any of this other stuff. You'll basically be able to go in and buy the ETF and they'll store it for you. And that, in essence, is a process of securitization of Bitcoin. When that happens, BlackRock, Fidelity, Grayscale, everyone can now market to the general public the ETF product. In addition to having their advisors and every fund manager on the earth calling their clients up and saying, we need to get an allocation into this asset that's got a 70% CAGR over the last 10 years. And that's what will happen. Every single person that has capital with BlackRock, Fidelity, Grayscale, and all of their subsidiaries and all of their product sales teams will be calling their clients and pitching them this new product because, number one, they make a fee on it. And number two, as the price of Bitcoin goes up, the value of the assets in the funds go up, and therefore the value of those fees go up. So not only will it be the best performing asset that their clients have had, it will also be the best performing asset that they have had because every 4 years the dollar value of their fees are going to go up. So the share price of those companies start going up because their fees are compounding in Bitcoin. And over the first 5 years, I think you could see $1 trillion of fresh capital go into Bitcoin as a result of the ETF. Now, it won't be going in through the ETF. But the fact that you've got the marketing around the ETF will mean that Bitcoin will see, I think, $1 trillion of inflows. And that could take us to a Bitcoin price of, depending on how you, understand the market, of somewhere in the region of $4 to $5 million a coin.
You're talking about which year again?
I'm talking about within the next, let's say, 5 to 8 years.
5 to 8 years, yeah. That's pretty big, I think, and it can actually happen. I think 100k case for the January or like next year in
I mean,
total.
in short term targets, I already put a video out about this. I think we get to 280K without the ETF and somewhere around 450,000 with the ETF in this next cycle.
That's amazing. Um,
It's not
what are
actually. It's actually not amazing. 450K would be an underperforming ETF marketing plan. Um, because there's 130 trillion dollars of capital in the world that's managed by the top 500 asset managers who are directly connected to BlackRock and its subsidiaries. So you could I'm talking about maybe a 0.25% allocation across that capital within the first cycle. It's an underperformance as far as I'm concerned.
At what time do we not price Bitcoin in US dollars anymore?
I'm
Like, do
not
you
on the
see a
camp.
time?
I'm not on the camp that thinks that happens.
Okay, so like Fiat will live on for.
Yeah, it will just be repurposed.
What do you mean with repurposed?
Like, one day you'll wake up and now the US dollar is backed 30% by Bitcoin and it becomes the strongest currency in the world again. You have a 70%, ability to fractionally lend out against it, but it's still the strongest currency in the world. I don't see an environment where there is a Bitcoin only world. I may be completely wrong, but I don't see that.
Mm. Yeah, it's interesting. I think in the Bitcoin community, everybody agrees on the amazing store of value side. But when it comes to unit of account and medium of exchange, the opinion seems to differ a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but when we come back to an individual and the chances there for, like you said, no hippie, what is a happy hippie guy that is not in there for like Bitcoin will not solve everything. Bitcoin will not free everything. And just because you have Bitcoin, everything will be perfect. And I'm a big proponent of that because it's just an asset you own. And of course, maybe your market value, your net worth goes up a lot. But this does not mean that everything is perfect now in your life. Um, but when we have an inflationary system, and for me, inflation is a tool to keep people smaller and steal purchasing power. What can Bitcoin do for like the majority of people? And do you see a future where everybody has Bitcoin as a standard savings device, or it will be just for people that are known and people that are knowledgeable about stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, you're in Austria, so the father of Austrian economics, Mises, didn't even talk about 100% reserve back system, right? People think he did, but he didn't actually talk about 100% reserve back system. So, yeah, I mean, I think Bitcoin allows the normal. What Bitcoin does is it democratizes savings, right? It democratizes investing, and that's hugely important. For example, when I'm buying a bar of gold, I'm buying an ounce of gold, which means I've got a 1 to 3% premium that I'm paying on the price of gold to get that big brick. A poor person that's trying to save, 50, $100 a month into gold is paying a premium of 40 to 60% on that 1 gram bar of brick. What that means is that I need the price of gold to go up 1 to 3% for me to break even and start making money. And the poor person needs the price of gold to go up 40 to 60% in order for them to break even and start making money. That's the biggest issue with gold. Bitcoin doesn't have that issue. Anyone, if I hand over $1 million and get it converted into Bitcoin, I'm probably going to pay 0.7%, 0.79%, whatever it is. And someone else who hands over $50 is probably going to end up paying 2.9%, right? So it starts to democratize the fee element on savings, really. And so that's what I think we have. And I think ultimately we have Bitcoin as savings and a government issued currency to activate those savings into the world when you need to.
You have said also that you were in property and real estate, you were into equity, so like stocks. Um, what is, how is Bitcoin different to all those equities and real estate? Did you also went into altcoins at some point? Did you had a shitcoin
No,
phase?
no, I didn't have a shitcoin phase. Now, that doesn't mean that I didn't buy shitcoins. I certainly did because as an investor, when you're coming into it, you got to try out all these different things. So I'm sure there's an account somewhere with a couple $1,000 in whatever the hell. But no, I didn't have a shitcoin phase. I never thought shitcoin was better. Shitcoins were better than Bitcoin. I understood the true purpose of Bitcoin immediately as soon as it clicked. and I've stuck with it since then. I've never ever thought that something else was going to be better than Bitcoin or anything like that. I also, with my unique life experience, I have the ability to generate liquidity without trading shit coins. So therefore, I've never had the need or the desire to do that. As far as all these other assets, the way I look at assets is very simple. You have to look at an asset like a battery, and I think Seyr talks about this as well. How money works is this: you go out, you put your physical labor out, and that physical labor gets converted into currency, which is what they pay you for that physical labor. Now, that currency, which is your energy, a representation of your energy, needs to be stored inside of a battery. And so the battery options that most people have are real estate, equities, and gold. And so, now you have Bitcoin. So now, if we analyze the qualities of those batteries of real estate, for example, a good quality is that it's hard to build a house. So therefore, the capacity of the battery is increasing at a very, very slow pace, which is good, right? Then you look at equities, right? One of the good things about equities is that there's all these people that are trying to build companies and create value and all this other stuff. So the quality of the battery is always refreshing. It's always a healthy battery that's remaining much faster than real estate. And then you look at gold and you go, okay, well, the fact that I can actually own some physical gold without going through a centralized process is a good quality to that battery too. And then you look at the negatives, right? One of the negatives of real estate is that it's geographically dependent. So even though we're all putting our energy into the same battery, the quality of the battery differs based on the geographical location of your choice of investment, which is a huge negative, right? So if the UK property market or the London property market goes to shit, I can't do anything about that because my energy is in that battery. It's in the battery of real estate, but it's now geographically dependent to London. If, for example, in equities, if the companies that I'm invested in turn out to have a CEO that's a scandalous CEO, I can't control that. No matter how good quality the battery is, that's a flaw that is available in that battery. And with gold, the fact that I can issue as a government permits to increase the supply of that gold whenever I want to, that's also a negative feature of that battery. So you analyze all of those things and you go, right, now we have Bitcoin. Bitcoin has a finite supply. You cannot regulatorily say, okay, I want more Bitcoin, so therefore I'm going to issue regulations to do that. And when you think about the negatives of the Bitcoin battery, so to say, I would say that the only negative of the Bitcoin battery is the learning curve it takes from hearing about it to actually learning how to hold that Bitcoin, especially if someone who's been focused on traditional assets. So you factor all of that in and you go, wait a second. So Bitcoin's the only battery that doesn't expand, right? Because real estate is always building more houses. Companies, they're always having new companies. And gold, I can basically print more gold by issuing more permits to mine gold and do gold discovery and increase investments and increase tax incentives. Whereas Bitcoin, I can't do that. So Bitcoin is the only battery where the supply lever of the asset is completely fixed. And that's what's unique about it. And that's what's very, very special about it. On the demand side, it's going through an adoption curve, which is also special. So therefore, Bitcoin is the best battery to store that currency and store that energy. And that's the one that people should choose or choose more of.
Will there come a time for you where Bitcoin hits a certain milestone or certain price where Bitcoin is not the best battery anymore?
No, Bitcoin will always, so there's assets and then there's business opportunities, right? There might be a time where Bitcoin is now compounding at let's say a 20% CAGR over the last 5 years. At that point, I might have other business opportunities where I could generate higher than 20% CAGR. But as far as the battery goes, someone's got to find a battery that has the network effects of Bitcoin, the ability to scale like Bitcoin, and a supply lever that's fixed and something else. And that doesn't really come around too often. How long has humanity been around? And mostly we have, 3 or 4 battery options. That's about it. So it doesn't come around too often that those battery options change. You got real estate, equities, gold, and for the institutional clients, more bonds. And that's really it for most people.
What do you think about CBDCs? How does this come into play with fiat money, with Bitcoin's trajectory? Is CBDCs influencing anything about Bitcoin? Is CBDCs influencing people's freedom?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think CBDCs are bad, but do I think they're coming? I absolutely think they're coming. I don't know when they're coming. I think there will probably be a wave of CBDC news like what we've seen. Then it will die away, and then there'll be another wave to make it more serious, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it takes a little bit of time before that actually comes to pass. But I think they're absolutely coming. And I think most people will operate a wallet or a wealth portfolio, which is, on the one side you have your CBDC, on the other side you have your Bitcoin, and then you transfer between the both when you want to save and spend.
So it will not change a lot
I
for.
think it will change a huge amount. If we want to talk about behavioral economics, I think that's a whole different discussion. The fact that I can influence somebody's behavior through a CBDC is quite important, but that's a completely different conversation to, how does it interact with Bitcoin? If I want a populace to spend more money on a certain thing, I can make that happen with a CBDC where I can't with cash.
But will they be able to do that with CBDCs once
Yeah.
Bitcoin is kind of mainstream? Will
Yeah.
Bitcoin be that mainstream and can okay?
Yeah. No, most people don't hold assets, right? Most people don't hold their stocks. No one really holds their stocks, right? Most people don't hold their real estate. They think they do. But if the government walks in and puts a yellow tape around it and you breach it and get arrested, are you really holding it? I don't think so. Gold is probably the one asset that people actually hold. Now, Bitcoin has the benefits of everything else and the ability to hold it yourself. So I think that's a huge advantage. But I think most people will be more comfortable with using a proxy product like an ETF.
That's a very interesting view. Um, there's the saying then like first they laugh at you, then they first they ignore you, then they laugh at you, then they fight you, then they join you. Are we with the Bitcoin spot ETF with good news coming out with even mainstream media now starting to having more and more positive things to say about Bitcoin? It seems at least for me like that. Are we coming in the join you part, or did they give up to fight Bitcoin, or did they even fight Bitcoin?
I don't think they ever fought Bitcoin. The fact that BlackRock is, the CIO of BlackRock was saying this in 2020, I think people have to understand that there is a difference between marketing and really hating something, right? I think a lot of it was marketing. I think they saw which way the wind was turning, and they, basically had to protect their own position, which they did, and now it is their own position. So they can now jump behind it. So, you know, I don't really think of it in those terms. I know a lot of people like to think of it in those terms, but that's just, if you want to feel vindicated, go for it. But, I was saying in 2020 that this is an ETF, it's coming, this is going to happen, et cetera, et cetera. So, it doesn't, this is, none of this is new to me. Or it's exactly what I said was going to happen is happening.
Mm. I heard about maybe like on a personal note for you. I heard about your VC funding and the story about British HODL. Can you talk
Kind of.
about how did you start this journey on documenting and speaking about publicly about Bitcoin, about the British HODL and your YouTube and X channel? How did this start?
Yeah, so I joined Clubhouse to start with during the flu season that we had worldwide over a couple of years,
Yeah,
and I was completely anonymous. People didn't know who I was. Built an audience on there, then went to Twitter and built an audience on there, and then this year I sort of just there's a part of me that was feeling bad because a lot of this information was out there, but no one's really parsing it correctly. Um, and I'm just sitting here going, if people don't get to one Bitcoin, they're going to miss this opportunity, and then they're going to complain about the fact that they missed it. And I felt really bad because people like my parents, for example, who I, had to educate into owning Bitcoin and holding Bitcoin, and only did it because of me, right? They're in real estate, but they didn't realize that their property portfolio actually has to be worth a lot more money than it is to keep up with the amount of pounds that have been printed. And so I just felt this desire to actually do this and get the message out. as far as the VC funding goes, that was a joke. It was a self-funded tripod that I bought, and I said it was a Series A VC funded round for an $80 tripod. And the reason for this is very simple. It's like, you know, right now there's a lot of Bitcoin YouTubers, but it's like hearing the fucking news, right? Like everyone's just reading the damn news. Well, what I really want to see, and it's now starting to happen, is that people with genuine life experience, genuine actual ability to parse out what's going on in the markets are now coming out and talking about Bitcoin. And I think that's more valuable for a lot of people, right? Podcasts, I think, are extremely valuable, but just people sitting there being paid to read the news to people, I don't see that as valuable. There's certain people that are doing it really in a really entertaining way and a really smart way, and that's great. But overall, I think just reading the news to people that already get it is valueless, right? My YouTube channel is not for people who already get Bitcoin. Yeah, people watch it because they already get it and they see the value in it to understand what's going on. But really, I'm trying to talk to people like my parents who are sitting, who have earned the right to have an opinion, and that opinion has still been stolen from them. That's who my YouTube channel is for. Everything else is irrelevant to me. I don't care whether anyone that already understands Bitcoin is a cypherpunk, is this, that, and the other, gives a shit, likes or hates anything that I do. As long as I keep getting messages from people who own traditional assets and they have, as a result of watching anything I put out, decided to pivot some of that to Bitcoin, I will continue speaking. There will be a moment where everything I say is completely irrelevant. And at that point, I'll just stop making videos.
It's a great mission. Yeah, it was wondering me because I just saw it quickly and it just came into my mind. And yeah, that's I
You
only saw
know,
it
no, I
quickly
don't
on.
need to. I don't need to raise any capital. I mean, we
Yeah,
got it's a fucking YouTube video. Like I don't need to raise any capital. What I needed was the desire to actually do it. And this is what we need. I love the fact that there's more younger people, there's more older people, there's people getting involved trying to share the message and the idea that this is extremely important. That's why I put a video out saying if you think any of my talking points have any value and you can say them better, take the talking points. Because a lot of people would message me, say, hey, can I do a video on this? Or can I talk about this? I'm like, don't even ask me. The message is more important than the messenger at this point. And I'm blessed. We grew from 1,800 subscribers that were just there from over 2 years to almost 23,000 in a space of 5 months.
wow.
It's been unbelievable, and I'm also, one of the things I'm happy about is that I seem to be able to speak to the crypto crowd as well as the Bitcoin crowd. And that's the goal here, is to help people understand what is the opportunity. Because I think Wall Street is lied. I think when they tell you that Bitcoin is gold 2.0, it's because they want you to believe that the maximum opportunity on Bitcoin is $500,000 and it doesn't have any value beyond that. When they understand that even if they paid $500,000 per Bitcoin, it's still worth many more millions of dollars, and therefore they'll take your Bitcoin at that level. So I want to try and get that message out, try and get people to not sell their Bitcoin at the time that Wall Street wants them to sell it. So that's all I'm trying to do here, and it's been a blessing that people have resonated with the message. I keep getting messages from people who finally got to their one Bitcoin. And that's what I'm doing. One day I just will stop doing it.
Yeah, it's a great mission. Um, what do you think about the whole thing with X, with mainstream media, with the more and more the shift to social media, to podcasting, to from journalists that are getting paid to journalists that are individual and independent on X? Um, is is that all good for you? What's your thoughts on like Elon Musk saying "Go fuck yourself" to advertisers? I think it's kind of a strength and um, different decision and a different direction we are going now. What do you think about
Yeah,
the
I think
developments?
it's great. I think it's great, and it's also bad because one way that you can, if you're in the misinformation game, One way to do that is to control the information that's coming out. And the second way to do that is to flood it with so much information that the person gets confused and then seeks the person of authority, right? So I think there's two sides to it. So far, I think it's fine, but one of the things I've noticed that the populace generally in the world has gotten stupider at parsing information. And if you don't know how to parse information, you don't know how to read between the lines, you don't know how to do these basic things, then I don't care whether you're getting your information from the government or whether you're getting it from Twitter, you're still going to be stupid, right? So I think that's really the main problem that we have here is we haven't educated the populace and young people on how to actually parse information and find what's useful. So whether it comes from Twitter or the government doesn't really matter because either way they'll be confused.
Will this always be the case?
No, there will be a point where governments realize that they've messed up, and in order to stay relevant, everyone will follow their own incentives. And the government's incentive is to stay relevant, is to stay voted in, stay in power. And if they find that the best way to do that is to help people realize that they need to get smarter, better, make the schools better, etc., that's what they'll do. But the pain hasn't got there yet. Hungary's doing this, right? So in Europe, Hungary's realized that Europe is facing a demographic crisis. And so what they've said is that any woman that has 4 children never has to pay income taxes ever again. And I believe it's the only country in Europe where the birth rate is actually going up. So once the incentives align, humanity adapts very, very quickly, but the incentives are not there right now.
All right, it's a great way to end it. We have an end routine in the podcast where we are having the previous guest asking a guest for the next, asking a question for the next guest.
Oh, sure.
The question is an interesting one. How much 100% free Bitcoin do you earn? Meaning reward programs, referral bonuses, anything like that? Or do you have any advices for people who want to earn free Bitcoin?
I don't use like the Bitcoin rewards programs because I think American Express Platinum gives me better rewards programs with better reward percentages. So I don't do that. I was talking against that in 2021. I don't have any recommendations to any trading platforms on my YouTube, even though I've been offered up to $5,000 a video, if you can believe it or not. To do that, just put a link in the description column. I don't do that because they trade other shit, and I would never. I don't want anyone that is associated. I would much rather promote a BlackRock Bitcoin ETF than some stupid exchange that's going to give me $5,000 per video. I would much rather support Fidelity or BlackRock, etc., because at least I know that anyone who's listening, their capital is going to be safer than one of these stupid exchanges. I don't really try and I haven't monetized my reach at all. So I don't. I guess I don't. I think that's the answer. I know that's probably not the answer that the guest was hoping to get, but I don't see the value in promoting shit to my audience that I don't use or I don't do it. My first email, I actually put the emails out when I get them on my Telegram so people can see it. Like as soon as I get an advertising offer, my first question is, "Are you Bitcoin only, or you trade other shit too?" And every single one of them has come back with, "We trade other shit too," and then the answer is, "Well, this is not a fit." So yeah, I don't do that.
Oh, interesting that there's zero monetization.
This is Robin. Look, this is my point, and I said this on Twitter a while back before I started making YouTube videos. I can make a YouTube video drumming home the point of people getting to 1 Bitcoin for the next 8 years, day in, day out, without earning a single penny extra. I don't need to earn a single penny. Does that mean I'm not going to monetize the audience at some point? No, that doesn't mean that. But my point is this: I don't have to take any money if I don't want to. And that is the type of spirit of Bitcoin people that I would like to see more of. And I think that's extremely important, and they're coming now, which is extremely great for humanity in the world. I don't need a single penny from anyone. I'm good.
And I
And
guess
that's a very, very powerful position to be in.
that's an amazing position to be in. And I guess there are a lot of Bitcoin only companies also that would happily sponsor.
I
the
wouldn't listen. Look, even Bitcoin only companies. It would Bitcoin having a Bitcoin only company approach me to do any advertising would take them to stage number two. And stage number two, that's as far as it would get them. Because at the end of the day, most of these Bitcoin only companies are VC backed by the same VCs that promote the shit coins. They've got burn rates of $10 million a year while they're only making $1 million a year revenue. They're lying to people saying we sell $500 million of Bitcoin and people don't realize that that $500 million, they only have a 1% fee, which means their actual gross revenue is $5 million, not $500 million. They're trying to position themselves now for an exit. And if they don't exit, which I don't know why they would, considering institutional demand for Bitcoin has been sucked out because it's gone to Coinbase, and retail demand is going about to go straight to the ETF, they'll be lucky if they're sold off for the value of the customer list. Nobody wants to take them public because it doesn't make any sense. They're making more money doing ancillary projects than actually selling the Bitcoin that they have. The best thing about Bitcoin only companies is the fact that they at least say, get your Bitcoin off the exchange, because I don't know how they survive past the next cycle.
it's a great way to end the podcast. Where can people find you, I guess, on X and YouTube? They can contact you the best.
Yeah, just go to YouTube, type in British HODL, and look for this face. My channel's on there. And if you're on X, it's at British HODL.
Yeah, great. Thank you for being on.
My absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.